Recently, I stumbled upon this vintage Fender Stratocaster tucked away in my cousin-in-law's basement. Covered in dust, missing strings, and showing signs of wear and age, it immediately caught my attention. I knew this guitar had a story to tell, and I was determined to give it a voice. So I set out on a journey of restoration and research, eager to return the guitar to playable condition and understand and share its history and significance with my family and fellow enthusiasts. My curiosity led me to explore the fascinating world of Fender guitars made in Japan during the 1980s. I dove deep into the topic to uncover the reasons behind Fender's decision to manufacture in Japan, to get an overview of the breadth of models produced, and to understand the impact and legacy of this decision on the brand. There's something about Japanese-made guitars that have always appealed to me. From their impeccable craftsmanship to their rich history, these instruments have captured the hearts and minds of musicians all over the world. My introduction to Japanese guitars began in 1983 when I purchased my first electric guitar, a Vantage Entertainer made in the famous Matsumoto factory. This guitar and I parted ways for many years, but it made its way home thanks to the efforts of a dear friend, but that's another story. A few years later, I purchased an Ibanez RG550, which I still own, and my most recent acquisition and one of my favorite guitars is an Ibanez Prestige AZ, crafted at the renowned FujiGen factory. I've always understood and appreciated the quality and value that these instruments represent. In this video, I'll take you on a journey through time, exploring the legacy of Japanese-made Fender guitars and the impact that they had on the music industry and the Fender brand. Join me as we celebrate a legendary brand that continues to inspire musicians worldwide. In 1946, Leo Fender, George Fullerton, and Dale Hyatt founded the Fender Electric Instrument Company in Fullerton, California, initially focusing on amplifiers and lap steel guitars. In 1951, Fender had their first commercially successful electric solid body guitar, originally known as the Broadcaster. However, this name was originally in use by the Gretsch Drum Company, and Fender was forced to change the name to the Telecaster. Those early transition models between Broadcaster and Telecaster are affectionately known as the No-Caster and are extremely rare and collectible. In the same year, Fender introduced the legendary Fender Basement Amp and the Precision Bass, heralding the dawn of the world's first mass-produced electric bass guitar. These two instruments, the Telecaster and the Precision Bass, emerged as pioneering forces in electrified music, laying the foundation for generations of musical innovations to come. 1954 brought the Stratocaster, renowned for its double cutaway design and versatile tonal options. It, like the Telecaster before it, quickly became iconic. Early players like Buddy Holly, Dick Dale, and Ritchie Valens paved the way for subsequent guitar heroes like Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, and Jeff Beck, cementing the Stratocaster's status as arguably the most iconic guitar design of all time. The Jazzmaster debuted in 1958, followed by the Jaguar in 1962. In 1965, Fender was sold to CBS, Columbia Broadcasting Systems, for $13 million, which was considered a substantial amount of money at the time. The $13 million acquisition reflected the significant value placed on Fender's brand, manufacturing capabilities, and market presence. Considering the economic conditions and business landscape of the mid-1960s, $13 million represented a considerable investment for CBS and underscored their commitment to expanding into new markets and industries. Prior to the sale, and for a brief period afterwards, Fender guitars were made by hand by skilled luthiers using quality materials. This, and the limited availability of these early models, is the primary reason why Fender guitars known as pre-CBS era guitars are so expensive and sought after. Opinions on the design changes brought by CBS to Fender guitars during the 1970s were divided. While some players appreciated certain innovations and modernizations, others lamented the departure from the classic Fender aesthetic and voiced concerns about compromises in quality. These debates continued to shape discussions around vintage Fender guitars and the legacy of the CBS era in Fender's history. Increased domestic and international competition and shifting musical preferences also put pressure on the brand. The 1980s gave birth to a surge in guitar heroes unlike any seen in any previous decade, defining an era of unparalleled virtuosity and showmanship. As musical preferences shifted towards more modern guitar designs, a phenomenon known as shred guitar emerged. Characterized by lightning-fast solos, intricate fretwork, and technical prowess, this new wave of guitarists captured audiences with their dazzling performances, pushing the boundaries of what was previously thought possible on the instrument. Pointy headstocks synonymous with the era became a ubiquitous symbol of the burgeoning shred movement. Brands like Ibanez, Jackson, Kramer, and Charvel rose to prominence, offering guitars tailored to the demands of these virtuosic players. Like in the movie Crossroads, the stage became a battleground for guitar supremacy, depicting the traditional blues player with a Tele versus the evil Jack Butler with his pointy headstock shred machine, each hero striving to outdo the other in a display of skill and flair. Nonetheless, artists like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Stevie Ray Vaughan continued to champion Fender guitars, contributing to the brand's ongoing relevance, influence, and visibility in popular music. Guitar manufacturers expanded their offerings to meet the growing demand, and competition intensified with the emergence of import brands from Japan. Brands like Tokai, Greco, Ibanez, Aria, Fernandez, and Yamaha were offering high-quality reproductions of popular Fender and Gibson models for fractions of the cost of the USA-made versions. Japanese luthiers were renowned for their meticulous attention to detail and craftsmanship, backed by extensive experience in woodworking and guitar building. This expertise allowed them to produce instruments of exceptional quality. Further, Japanese companies implemented stringent quality control measures, ensuring that every guitar met their criteria before leaving the factory, further enhancing their reputation for quality. Consumers took note, and it didn't take long for word to spread regarding the quality and value of these instruments. CBS, recognizing this, examined the possibility of producing guitars for the US market at a price point that would allow them to compete with these offshore brands. In 1981, after realizing this goal could not be met domestically, CBS made the decision to move guitar production to Japan, partnering with established Japanese guitar manufacturer FujiGen Gakki. A little side note, don't let the word Gakki confuse you. You'll often hear it used after the words Dyna or FujiGen, so Dyna Gakki or FujiGen Gakki. It simply means musical instruments. Fender aimed to leverage the expertise of Japanese craftsmen to produce high-quality guitars at competitive prices and in higher volumes to meet the growing demand. This agreement was a brilliant move for CBS, effectively stopping the import of many knockoff guitars, while at the same time providing CBS with the means to produce quality guitars at competitive prices for the expanding global market. It makes great sense why Japan was targeted as a suitable place to produce quality instruments at an affordable price. During the 1980s, Japan became a global hub for high-quality production, driven by its reputation for precision engineering and reliability. With a skilled workforce and access to advanced technology, Japanese manufacturers consistently exceeded international standards. The stable political and economic environment, along with strategic partnerships, further bolstered Japan's position as a leader in offshore production, attracting companies seeking top-notch manufacturing capabilities. Fender executives inspected the first batch of guitars made by FujiGen sometime in April of 1982. They were faithful recreations of Fender's 1957 and 62 Strats, 57 and 62 P basses, and 1952 Telecasters. The reaction from Fender executives to the Japanese-made guitars was overwhelmingly positive. Dan Smith, vice president of marketing at the time, said, "Everybody came to inspect them and the guys almost cried because the Japanese product was so good. It was what we were having a hell of a time trying to do." But unlike the USA models, these were offered at 3 different price points: the 65, the 85, and the 115. These numbers corresponded to the price of the guitar in thousands of yen, 65,000, 85,000, and 115,000 yen respectively. 115 models were top of the range and were finished in nitrocellulose lacquer and mirrored the USA-made versions in just about every way. Early models had a sticker on the back of the headstock with the numbers 65, 85, or 115, which would denote the tier level of the guitar. Later models were stamped on the neck heel and in the neck pocket with the letter A, B, or C, which indicated which tier the guitar was from. The top tier, or 115, was stamped with the letter A, the mid-tier 85 was stamped with the letter B, and the bottom tier 65 was stamped with the letter C. Serial numbers began with the letters JV to denote Japanese vintage. These initial guitars were never intended for export to the United States. Rather, they were aimed at the Japanese domestic market. Due to demand, in 1982, Fender added the word Squire series to the headstock label and began exporting these guitars to the United Kingdom. The Squire name was derived from a violin string company that Fender had purchased in 1965. In 1982, Fender launched a line of Squire guitars for the Japanese domestic market. These were known as the SST-45, SST-50, and SST-55. These featured made-in-Japan pickups and were initially intended to offer Japanese players with an affordable alternative to the JV series. It was worth noting that the JV serial number was still in use. By 1983, Squire guitars were modified and imported into the USA from Japan. These early models featured a larger 70s-style headstock, 3-bolt neck pattern, and bullet truss rod adjustment reminiscent of the late 70s USA models. These serial numbers began with the letters SQ. Also in 1983, Japan launched the CST-30S, CST-45, CST-50, and 55 models for their market. The CST models, like the USA Squires, featured the 70s larger headstock, 3-bolt neck, and bullet truss rod adjustment, and until 1984 used the JV serial number designation, further confusing would-be collectors today. By 1984, CBS had agreed to sell Fender to a group of investors led by Bill Schultz for $12.5 million, ironically less than what CBS had paid for the company in 1965. However, the sale of the company did not include the Fullerton factory. The lack of a factory meant that Fender had to sell imports and old stock until a new production facility could be opened. In 1985, Fender contracted companies in Korea to manufacture the Squire line for import into the USA, and they relied on Japanese-made guitars to fill the void for American consumers. By October of 1985, Fender had relocated production to a new facility in Corona, California. It took time to ramp up production for the domestic market, so in the meantime, Japanese import guitars continued to fill the void. In 1986, Fender Japan created their own custom shop, a full year before Fender USA did the same thing. They introduced guitars known as the X-Strat or extra traditional models. From 1988 to 1991, they used the X-Strat logo, which later changed to the custom edition stamp from 1992 to 1994. The final range of one-off guitars were the OM or order-made guitars. These instruments might include features and specifications that would not have been available anywhere else. In 1992, the Dyna Corporation commenced guitar production for Fender, introducing a new label, Crafted in Japan. It's worth noting that these two designations, made in and crafted in, really only distinguish which factory made the guitar. All FujiGen instruments were labeled Made in Japan, and guitars built at Dyna would bear the Crafted in Japan logo. There was, however, an overlap of the two logos between 1992 and 1996. 1996 marked the termination of the FujiGen contract, and at this point, all production shifted to Dyna. In 2008, the Crafted in Japan language was dropped and the Made in Japan logos were once again used, even though the guitars were no longer being made in the FujiGen factory. In 2015, Fender began overseeing their own production of guitars made at the Dyna factory, and by 2022, the JV modified line was introduced as a modern twist to the celebrated and highly sought after original JV models. This new line of guitars is once again being built at FujiGen, and this is the first time that FujiGen has been building Fender guitars since 1996. Fender's move to Japan in 1981 marked a pivotal moment in the company's history. It allowed Fender to maintain its commitment to quality while increasing production capacity and reducing manufacturing costs. This decision not only reshaped Fender's manufacturing strategy, but also had a profound impact on the brand and the guitar industry as a whole, setting new standards for quality, craftsmanship, and affordability. I think you could make the argument that this decision played a crucial role in preserving the legacy of the Fender brand itself, an emblem of American culture, history, and ingenuity. Fender guitars have long been synonymous with the American musical landscape, embodying the spirit and innovation and creativity that defines the nation's identity. By ensuring the brand's continued relevance and accessibility through its expansion into Japan, Fender not only safeguarded its own legacy, but also upheld its status as a cherished American icon, loved by musicians and enthusiasts worldwide. Well, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. This project has been a labor of love, and while I've relished every moment of research and discovery, it's clear that the story runs quite a bit deeper than what we could cover in this video. Over the span of 40 years, Fender Japan has produced countless models, many of which I still haven't really looked into. If you're interested in further exploration, I've left some links in the description that will help you continue down the rabbit hole. And if you're a proud owner of one of these Japanese-made Fender guitars from this era, I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Let us know what you have. For more in-depth insights, check out videos by 5 Watt World and Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar. Both of these guys have done exceptional content related to these Japanese-made Fender guitars. Mike and Mike's are particularly knowledgeable as they have a shop based in Seattle, and they're a really good resource for not only understanding the history behind these instruments, but maybe helping you to identify exactly what model and year you have. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel, maybe check out some merch. Your support means the world, and it really helps me to be able to continue to do projects like this. A special thanks to my friends Jeff and Grant for letting me borrow and explore and spend time with their Japanese-made Fender guitars. This is the guitar that kind of started me down this journey, and we determined that this is a 1986 ST57115. The guitar was manufactured July 18th, 1986, and definitely served as the catalyst for this journey. It's been a privilege to revive this piece of musical history, and I'm really happy to see that it's returning home to be cherished and played by Grant and his family. The next guitar I want to take a look at is this one. This is my friend Jeff's Strat. It's a made in Japan Strat. It's a System 1 tremolo here. We believe this is a contemporary Strat. Definitely has a flatter radius, which would be conducive to that model. But what's really strange here is there's no serial on the headstock, and there's no serial located here. So it's made in Japan on the headstock, not back here like the other ones. Now there's an A series serial number stamped on the neck plate. But my understanding is that that wasn't common practice with these guitars at the time. So with his permission, we're going to disassemble it and see what we have. If you're watching this, feel free to drop a comment and let us know what you think this is, and we'll dive a little bit more into it next time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.